GameDay Garage presents Campus Blitz with PJ Glasser and Ryan Horvat.
Talk some Michigan Wolverines now as we welcome on Clayton Sayfie, who joins us for the Wolverine.com for On 3. Give Clayton a follow on X at CSayF23. Clayton, appreciate the time, man. And I think Michigan's way more intriguing than the national media is kind of talking about them this season, because you get the new coach in Whittingham, but then you also have Bryce Underwood, who was, the undisputed number one overall recruit coming out of high school in 2025. And if you can just put that all together, it could be a special season for Michigan. So do you think the bigger story going into the season is to see if Whittingham is a good fit for this program, or if Bryce Underwood takes that big step in his sophomore season?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it might be the Bryce Underwood part of it, because I do like a lot of the talent that they have across the roster. Of course, any coaching staff in today's college football wants more depth, and Kyle Whittingham has talked about that. It might take a class or two for them to get where they want to be in that regard. But at the end of the day, I mean, Sharon Moore recruited really well. Jim Harbaugh recruited well. There's a lot of talent on this roster. You have a quarterback who was really highly touted coming out of high school, was put in a tough situation last year, did okay at times, but didn't show up and play his best football in the bigger games. And now it's kind of that if you use that word. And I think that's what we're all waiting to see is, the receiving core is better. The offensive line's better. You have great running backs that might be the best tandem in the country. The defense should be good. I think that the defense will get better as the year goes on. So we'll see what they are early on. But a lot of it is riding on Underwood. And, I think that it's just, you're not going to know what he's going to be until you get out there with the live bullets in terms of how much improvement he made from last year.
Yeah, it's kind of where I wanted to go too, because last year they were 14th in rushing, averaging, over 200 rushing yards per game. And I know Haynes left, but they should be even better this year. What about the wide receiver room? Did they got guys that could create separation, get open? Do you worry about that at all? Other than Underwood, how do you feel about that room?
I think on paper, it's one of the better receiving cores Michigan's had in a while. Andrew Marsh comes back after breaking some freshman records here at Michigan last year, 45 catches, over 650 yards, 5 total touchdowns. And then they bring in J.J. Buchanan, who was a freshman at Utah last year, the only guy on this offense that's actually been in this system under Jason Beck before. And he had 9 contested catches, according to PFF. He's kind of a jump ball type receiver, former tight end, former basketball player, if you want to go that route too, and use the cliche there for a guy who can go up and get the ball. But he is somebody that I think is going to add a different element where you can play him in the slot, almost like if you were to split out a tight end, but he's kind of more of a receiver. And then they have guys that have played a lot of football here at wide receiver that are further down on the depth chart this year than they have been in the past. And that just tells you how much they've upgraded at that position. And then a couple intriguing tight ends too that they can throw to, and the running backs they can throw to. So yes, I think that, let's say the same Bryce Underwood from last year came in and started this season, he would be much better because the receivers are better. 6 offensive linemen that have started games at Michigan are back on the roster, plus, additions. And then the running backs are still strong. So the infrastructure around the quarterback offensively is really good. And I like the coordinator in Jason Beck too.
Clayton, what do you think is the most important game on the schedule for Michigan this year? We were just talking about Penn State with Daniel Gallen and how they kind of avoid all the top teams. Michigan is the quite opposite. They got to play Ohio State, obviously, Oregon this year, Indiana. They get the Buckeyes and the Ducks on the road. They also get Oklahoma in week 2, which I kind of think is their biggest game, because if they win that, there's a shot they could be 6-0 heading into the Indiana game. And, right now I'm looking at lines, and Michigan's it's pretty much a pick 'em in that game. The fact that it's just early season, it's Whittingham's first game, I think that game is just so massive for both of those teams, considering how hard their conference schedule is. But with all those tough teams that Michigan's going to have to play this year, what for you kind of sticks out on the schedule?
Yeah, most important has to always be Ohio State around here. But I see your point. I think Oklahoma and Indiana are the 2 games that, is just going to continue to tell you in the beginning of the year and then midway through the season where this team's at and where they can go. And part of that is the result, right? Like you mentioned, if you beat Oklahoma, then you're halfway through the season, potentially undefeated. I know there are some tough games still in there. You got to go to Minnesota, who has a lot coming back. You have to play Iowa at home. Like, those are losable games, but at the same time, you'll be favored to win those. But the Indiana one, it might be the biggest, I think, before November, and will tell us what kind of spot Michigan is in going into November. Because if they can go into the Oregon game with 1 or 2 losses, and you never know what could happen. It's tough to win on the West Coast against a team that good. That I think I would have in preseason number 1. But still, if you can go into that with a little bit of a buffer, then I think you're in a good spot to potentially make the playoff, which is one of the big goals for any team in this caliber.
The defense was still good last year, but not your typical Michigan defense. They make the hire of Jay Hill. How did you feel about that? And then how do you feel about the defense last season? I know they were 0-3 when they gave up more than 150 rushing yards. So not used to that, like especially with the Harbaugh era. But how do you feel about the defense going into the season, especially with the new coordinator coming in?
Yeah, Wink Martindale really didn't have much of a head coach. He didn't really have an offense to deal with in 2 years here. So he was put in a tough spot. And I think that, his defenses, they didn't hold up last year in the bigger games, USC, Ohio State. You saw the Texas game at the end of the year where, you had some guys out, but it was a bit of a disaster late when they gave up their fourth quarter lead. So I think that, regardless, that you have a couple difference makers on that defense. John Henry Daly at the edge rusher spot. He was the first team All-American at Utah last year, coming off an injury. And then Rod Moore, also coming off an injury, has only played 3 games, 86 snaps in the last 2 years with some complications with his knee. He's healthy now. So if those guys remain healthy and return to form, which I think they can, then you can really build around those 2 difference makers. Jay Hill is the coordinator. I like the hire. It took him a year to get BYU up to speed. Now, it wasn't all up to him, but he was much better in years 2 and 3, and he's called his defense the most complicated scheme in the country. So how good are they right away? Are they good enough to stack up with Oklahoma and what we think could be an improved offense for the Sooners this year in week 2? Because that's going to be the first big challenge. Then I think they have a little bit of time to figure it out, but we'll see there. So he has said there's some similarities to what Michigan ran under Jesse Minter, which is music to Michigan fans' ears because, he's an absolute stud and now the head coach of the Ravens. So I think that if they can continue to play that bend, don't break style, they have a lot of talent here to work with, especially if guys return to form coming off injury.
As a Ravens fan, Clayton, absolutely loving the Jesse Minter hire. So
Love
I'm totally
that.
with you there, man. He's going to be a stud. I thought, too, one of the great moves that Whittingham made was bringing over his longtime offensive line coach with him from Utah and Jim Harding, who's one of the best in the business. I mean, look, you think of those great Michigan teams going back to Harbaugh days, or just when Michigan's good, man. It's always the line of scrimmage. You were talking about a little bit and on the defensive side of the ball, but are they kind of excited about what they have up front this season? And, they do lose Justice Haynes in the backfield. Do they still feel like they could be pretty dominant on the ground?
Absolutely. I mean, Utah led the country last year with 6 yards per carry. Michigan was 14th in the country in rushing offense a year ago. So you mesh the scheme and the coaching staff from Utah with the personnel at Michigan. I know Justice Haynes played a part in that, but Jordan Marshall ended up being their number 1 rusher, and they bring in Savion Hyder, the 5-star true freshman, number 1 running back in the class. The offensive line is a year older. I mean, and everybody stuck around. A couple guys entered the portal, but they all withdrew. And then you bring in Andrew Babalola, who was a 5-star who got hurt last year, missed his freshman season. He'll be in the mix for playing time. I'm not sure he's going to start, but that just shows you, I think, how hot the competition has been there during fall camp. So I think the offensive line is going to take a step forward. That's going to help Underwood out. It's going to provide a nice run game for him. So it's a win-win-win, I think, in all those facets.
Clayton, before we let you go, in about 30 seconds, what would be your prediction for Michigan this season? If you had to put out maybe what you think their record is going to be, what would you say?
I've been going with 8-4. I just think that Oklahoma, Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, I think those teams are better than Michigan coming into the season. And it doesn't mean you can't beat them. I mean, 2 of those games are at home, but I'd say a couple coin flips don't go their way in year 1 under Whittingham, but I think we'll come out of the season feeling like, it's disappointment if you don't make the playoff, if you don't beat Ohio State. That has to be the sentiment here at Michigan. but you feel like you're on the right track and that your identity is back under this coaching staff. I think it's a good fit. But this year, to get it done and make the playoff, I don't have them there yet.
Yeah, that is a tough schedule. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Clayton Sayfie, the Wolverine.com for On 3. Give him a follow on X at CSAF23. Always appreciate the time, Clayton. Have a great season, man, and hope to catch up with you during the season.
Appreciate it.
For sure. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good stuff there from Clayton.